A.K.A. Ghost. I know a lot of people are not going to watch this video. I'm not going to get a lot of views like I did during the protest of the immigration protest. I did a video yesterday and I only got 42 views. So I deleted it because I started going, somewhere else with my video, which I didn't stay on point of what I was making the video for. So I want to talk about Juneteenth. Why are we celebrating Juneteenth? Juneteenth has been over since 300 years ago after the abolishment of slavery and allowing blacks, which I hate using this word, to be free because we weren't free. We were just released from bondage, but a lot of the slaves that were still um, in bondage at the time really didn't get the message of being free. It took a long time for African people to be free from slavery. It didn't happen that same day, after Lincoln got his votes, which I keep telling people Lincoln got votes because the Democratic Party didn't want to actually help free slaves. So this is basically um, during the war when a lot of Africans were still slaves and a lot of them were fighting in the war, but a lot of Africans weren't free once it was abolished because, like I said, we didn't have email, we didn't have internet, we didn't have cell phones. Our ancestors didn't have any of these things to learn about, you know, being free because a lot of the slaves still thought that the war was still going on, even though a lot of the South has been taken over by the Yankees at the time, and they were going in there snatching people out their homes. The Yankees will take take the Southern's homes or slave homes, and destroy them, kick the people out, throw them out. Um, and a lot of slaves didn't understand what was going on. So when they abolished slavery, it wasn't just like how we could just go on the internet and say, well, slavery is over, y'all could be free. It wasn't like that. So, because like I said, they didn't have internet, didn't have social media, didn't have none of that stuff. They didn't have phones or anything like that, or email or mail to be delivered to say, well, you got to free these people, you got to let them go. We didn't have any of that shit. So, the thing about it is about Juneteenth that us blacks are celebrating because we were giving something that we complained about again because we always want something. Like we think we deserve something just because we were slaves. And I don't think Juneteenth was celebrated at that time, but it was really not a holiday. Now we made it a holiday because we begged for them to give us Juneteenth. So when they gave us Juneteenth, we're happy. But we don't even a lot of people don't even know what Juneteenth is really about. They think it's about being free and the abolishing slavery. But you got to understand, it didn't happen like that. It really happened that a lot of Africans were still in bondage. They were not free. They wasn't going around doing whatever because they didn't know about anything about being free because Lincoln, um, you know, had to get his votes because like a couple of years before that, he didn't get the votes to free slaves, and this is when his own Republican and Democratic Party were actually beefing against each other to trying to free slaves. And like I told blacks, y'all love being a Democrat, but you got to understand, Democratic Party during that time did not want to free slaves. And at the time, well, blacks were not even Republican or Democrat at the time. But when Lincoln was offering them to come and fight the war, he will give men a chance to vote. So, but they had to vote under Republican. So that's why black men were Republicans. Women wasn't voting. Women wasn't voting anyway. Period. It was just men voting at the time. Women wasn't allowed to vote. So Lincoln gave opportunities for black men to vote. And but it was so smart because Lincoln was being reelected, and then Lincoln got reelected right after the war. He ended up getting assassinated. He was promising blacks everything, land, all this kind of stuff, and Lincoln got assassinated. So all that really didn't happen. A lot of that shit was just bullshit because once blacks were free, they were given land. Yes, they were given their slave masters' property at the time. But once the war was over, after Lincoln died, the next president of the United States took all that from the Africans and kicked the Africans out of their own slave master's home. And they gave them an ultimatum: you can work for your former slave master, or you can leave. So a lot of former slaves stayed. That means they didn't go out and be free. They didn't want to go and be free because they didn't know what it felt like to be free because they were so used to being in bondage and used to being under rule of a slave master. They didn't know how to just get up and just leave. So they stayed with their slave master and worked for them, even though the slave master cried and was upset that, slavery was over. So slaves had the right to leave or stay. So a lot of slaves stayed. They didn't go and leave the plantation. They actually died on the plantation working for their slave masters, and most of them was buried in their slave masters' graves because they wasn't allowed back then. They didn't allow blacks to be buried anywhere near any white people, so they will separate them. So a lot of the slaves will be buried in their slave masters' plot or her plot or whatever. And it was bad because once slaves got free, slaves were just roaming around. They wasn't actually doing anything. They were actually getting locked up and thrown back in slavery. That means they were taken to jails, and if they didn't have like papers or whatever that they were working, because at the time they were trying to say that Africans need to work and blacks wasn't working because they didn't have no jobs. Because why would they have jobs? And they had nowhere to go. So they were roaming around, and so the white man had opportunity to lock them up. So they were locking them up, throwing them in like jails. Because like I said, that's the reason why they built jails. That's the reason why they built prisons. They built prisons for African people that were free from slavery. They didn't know where to go, had no money, no job. They didn't want them roaming around. They didn't want black people in their neighborhoods. They didn't want Africans. They were thinking that Africans were going to start killing whites because of out of revenge, or kidnapping women and murdering children because they didn't. At the time, after slavery, white people really were afraid of black people being freed. So a lot of blacks had to protect themselves and their family from getting locked up because once they got locked up, they were taken right back into slavery again because they were working free slave labor. So I'm trying to figure out why we celebrate Juneteenth when Juneteenth was that blacks were never freed because once Africans walked out of the homes of their their bondage, they were still slaves because they wasn't even considered citizens. Africans were not considered citizens at all. It took years for Africans to become citizens, even though they were voting. That don't mean nothing because that doesn't mean crap that they were voting. They didn't have no birth certificates. They didn't have no social security number. They had no place of residence to live. They had no address. They had no jobs. They had no money. They had no land. They were given land, but their land was taken away from them. And now they had to go struggle to try to find somewhere to go. And blacks did not know where to go because they were lost. A lot of the times they were thinking that, then we might as well just go back to Africa. But they couldn't even go back to Africa because even the United Union didn't even want to send them back to Africa, which they had opportunity to go back to Africa after slavery. But they didn't go back. They stayed here. Why why would you go back to bondage? Because I would have probably did the same thing because I don't know where to go. I never left my plantation, so I'd never been anywhere but being around my slave master, working for my slave master, and that's all I did. I would go to the store for my slave master. I will work for my slave master to do things that I'm supposed to do as a slave. And once I got free, where the fuck am I going? I don't know the land. I don't know the landscape. Blacks didn't know anything about America. They only on a plantation. So once they were free, they were just lost. So a lot of them really thought like, damn, I should have stayed on the plantation. Me going around. A lot of them died. A lot of them left and went to Kansas because they believed that Kansas was the only place they could actually find work. And a lot of Africans died from yellow fever, smallpox, measles. A lot of them just roamed around and also got locked up. And most of them got taken back into working free slave labor. And it had nothing to do with, because Lincoln didn't free the, I keep telling people Lincoln didn't free the slaves because if he didn't get them votes by threatening his parties, the Democrats and Republicans, he would have never got them votes like he did before. He didn't get them votes. He needed votes to get them freed, and he got the vote, but he threatened them. And if they would have lost the war, blacks would have still been slaves. So you got to think about it. It wasn't even about black people going out there fighting the war. Only reason why a lot of Africans men fought the wars because they wanted to get their family freed because it was a promise that Lincoln made. But a lot of Africans died. We don't celebrate the Africans that died during that war. A lot of them, millions of them, died during the war fighting for their own freedom and their family's freedom. While blacks were fighting the war, a lot of the people that were not fighting the war were still slaves. So he was doing emancipation, proclamation, all that. They were still slavery. It wasn't broken yet. And when they broke the tie of slavery, it didn't get out there. They had to roam around and figure out how they're going to go out there. And I think it was Lizzie Grant or one of them was on horseback trying to go to each place of the South to tell them that slavery was over. Like they had to go on horseback to do that. So a lot of the blacks that were still enslavement, they found out through probably one of the soldiers that fought for the Union. So they probably thought, okay, well, you're free. But they probably didn't believe them. They didn't even want to leave the house because they were so afraid of their slave master might do something to them if they go. A lot of them were afraid that they were going to be hunted by the slave master and having, slave hunters hunt them. They were that scared to go out the house because they wasn't used to going out the house. They wasn't used to, going anywhere but except staying on the plantation. But why are us black people celebrating something that we don't really know nothing about? That day was given to us because we complained. Oh, we looked it up. We found out about this day. Now we want it. We want this day. Now we're having these parades. And this all happened during the 2020. And I'm like, why do we need these days? Because we feel that they owe us something. We've been out of bondage for 300 years. And how many years since Juneteenth? About 300 years ago. And now we're celebrating it now. Why do we wait so long? How did we learn about this? Because I knew about Juneteenth, but it was already celebrated 300 years ago when slavery, when they broke bondage of slavery. That's the only time they celebrate. But it wasn't a holiday. Now we're making it a holiday because black people want something to look back forward of what we were freed. We were never free. Where do you get, why do people ever do their history? We were never free once we were released from bondage. Yes, you could say that slavery was over, but we wasn't free. We were still roaming around everywhere. We were still getting thrown right back into free slave labor. We were still making money for the country. We made more money for the country than any other people any other immigrant that came here. Africans made more money than any other immigrant that ever lived here. We made really billions of dollars during slavery, picking cotton, picking rice, and doing all this other stuff, doing sugarcane mines, all this other kind of stuff that we did. Our ancestors did. My ancestors did. Why are we celebrating the thing that we went through that was so violent? Knowing that if you look back at how violent the violence that we went through to try to survive slavery, our ancestors had to survive on a boat to get here, to survive 300 years of being on this country, not be able to be free to do anything except work, 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 and work. That's why us black people are so eager to do things, to work, because we're so used to it. And we want to recognize as freedom. There's no such thing as freedom. We were never free just because we live in the United States. Yes, You think it's a free country. But the people that were here, that were in bondage, were not free. You're free because your ancestors are gone and you were born in this country. So you can see yourself, oh, well, I'm a free person. Yes, but you're not because you're still a bloodline of that slave trade that happened 300 years ago. And even if you look at your back of your past and try to want to forget that you're African and try to figure out what you are because you don't want to believe that you're African or an African blood because you are so upset about being your ancestors being former slaves and you are still part of that bloodline. And you still have to talk about it. You don't want to talk about it because a lot of people will look at you differently like, oh, well, okay, well, you're not free. We're not. Black people will never be free. We are still part of a product. We were products, dog. Like how they send products over here from Japan and China and all these countries. We were the same way. We were products. We were sold to the highest bidder. Our ancestors were sold to the highest bidder to make us work. They made sure that we were strong, make sure our women were fertile, make sure our little kids can work on little things like plantations and can go in gold mines and do all these other little things that they can do with their little bodies, or they'll won't even see their family. They'll snatch them up and give them to somebody else. And while the mother's running over there like, oh, it's taking my baby away, she'll get beat to death or she'll get beaten. The kid is crying, Mom, Mom, why are they taking me? The dad is nowhere in sight because they took the father already. Or he was killed on the boat by getting over there for fighting to save his family. But nobody wants to talk about it. Everybody wants to talk about freedom. Why do we always talk about freedom? We want to talk about freedom so many times in this country, but you know this country was never a free country. We only free on things that we could do here, not what we had done in our past, because we still are going through the same thing as our past, but we don't want to look at that shit. We want to look at it that way. Because we look at other countries and believe in other countries are worse than us. And those other countries were never far worse than this country 300 years ago. We had the Native Americans, you had the Africans, the Jews, you had the Puerto Ricans, all these different kinds of nationalities, the Chinese, the Japanese, were all coming over here. They were treated the same fucking way. Most of them wasn't even slaves, but the Africans were. And Native Americans asking that question. Puerto Ricans ask that question. Why is it that y'all are former slaves? You actually are still bowing down to the slave masters that had you in slave chains. Why are you still worshiping them? Black people say, I don't. Yes, you do. We still worship the white man. We still worship him. We worship the motherfucker that's on the dollar bill. We worship the motherfucker that's on a 20. We worship the motherfucker that's on a 5. We worship the motherfucker that's on 100. We worship them. That's the reason why I still believe that we're still slaves, because we never got away from our slave masters, because they look at us every day when we pick up that currency. Every time we pick up that currency, who do we look at? George Washington, Ben Franklin, Thomas Jefferson. We look at them every day. They look at us every day. And we want to say that we're free. I understand. You got your own house, you got your own car. You know, you're not going through what your ancestors went through. But honestly, you are. Just because everybody's dealing with the same bullshit, really honestly, everybody's not dealing with the same bullshit because we're still separate. We're still separate by race. And the only culture that's the most hated culture is black culture. Always been. It could be any other culture that put a big ass circle. Blacks will always be in the middle of being hated by every single culture because they were taught that way to hate us, because us were the ones that were here doing everything to build this country. We were here building this country before any other immigrant came here. Besides, the Native Americans were already here, but Africans were the ones building this country from the ground up. We were the first actual immigrants of this country besides the Europeans. That's crazy. And we talk about Mexicans, we talk about many other, but we're the first immigrants that came from another country over here besides the fucking Europeans. Then you see all these other cultures come through because of money, of gold, because of trade, different things that were going on from factories and stuff that was coming over here. People wanted to see they could make money in this country. So they started coming over here illegally. But not even illegally, because it was no such thing as undocumented immigrants during that time in the 1700s. Everybody could come to this country. But during the 1800s, when they started using documentation of you being an illegal immigrant or a legal immigrant, then they started making you do paperwork. But that was in the 1800s, right after the war. Now we have illegal immigration, which honestly they were trying to make sure the country don't get full up, so they wanted to use that as just to keep people from other countries from filling the country up with a whole bunch of immigrants that were not documented, knowing that Europeans made themselves documented immigrants. But they didn't make the Africans like that when they got freed. Blacks were not fucking legal. Our ancestors wasn't legal. They were roaming around without no documents or any papers. So basically, like they said, you know what happened during the time of immigration back in 1930 and 1950. They were snatching up people that didn't have no papers. They were doing the same thing to Africans. The same exact thing to us. And this is the reason why I don't understand why black people have a nerve to talk bad about immigrants when our ancestors went through the same fucking thing. They were snatching us up, but they were throwing us in prisons. And they were forcing us to do free slave labor. So we wasn't making any money. We were going we were going backwards. Then they were trying to start slavery again. People don't even know they were trying to start slavery again. Even during the Jim Crow, even during the redlining, civil rights movement. I could go to Black Code. I could go through all these things that were all placed on black people. And black people had their own businesses. They had their own land. They had the black stock market. They had everything basically working for them. But guess who destroyed that? That's the reason why I say blacks are not free. Because look at all these black towns that we had, these black thriving businesses during the 1900s, all the way down to the 1950s. They're all gone. Black people are not making money like they did in the 1900s, making millions of dollars buying land for like $20 or buying land for $300. You know, they were buying land so fucking cheap that blacks, not just men, women were owning land. Even children were owning land. Black children were owning land at the time because it was so cheap. And we couldn't pass it on because they took it from us. They took our farmland from us. They took our businesses from our ancestors. They took their inventions, everything. How are you free when you don't have nothing? You don't own nothing. Us black people, we don't own shit. Absolutely nothing. I know black people don't want to hear this. They hate it. They want me to say so much good things, but you gotta face reality. We never had it good here. Only time that we had it good here, it was the 1900s. Because we actually were working to build something in this country, but they saw that, they got jealous, and they took it from us. And it continues to take us from the 1900s until this fucking very day. And they use us to elect their presidents. They use us to elect their senators and their mayors. They use us as saying they're going to help us, give us better this, better that. And they don't do nothing. How's that freedom? Why do you listen to these people tell you they're going to do things for you, knowing it's a lie, a pathological lie to make you put your vote in? Knowing we did that during the time of Lincoln. Even though he died, we don't know what Lincoln would have done for blacks because Lincoln even said that he's not there to help blacks, just like how Obama did. And black people don't understand. That's what he said. I'm not here to help black people. I'm just here to set an example that slavery is wrong. That's what he said. Slavery was wrong. You should not hold nobody in bondage. That's what he said. But everything else, he didn't care nothing about the black man or the black woman because he's a white man dealing with his own shit going on with his children. His son wants to go to war. He got a little kid that died from a sickness. Then he had another son that he was trying to keep alive, and his wife was crazy. So he's going through stuff, and he's dealing with a country that's actually divided because he want to free slaves, but he's also about to go to war, but he wants to bring factories. He wants to do all this other kind of stuff that's really making him sick because during the war, he actually got sick. And he almost died during the war because he was so skinny and so unnourished to actually run the country because they were actually going to make him force him to leave the office so he wouldn't die in office. But once he got that opportunity to say, okay, back, I'm going to work a little bit harder, but I need your help. He needed everybody's help to help free slaves because he didn't do that shit by himself. He needed the Democrats to actually get them votes, and they did. But after the war happened, The Democratic Party just changed their mind and say, you know what? Let's do the Jim Crow. Let's talk about this. Let's do other shit. Because, like I said, Jim Crow was very, very bad for black people. It was worse than the Civil Rights Movement. And that lasted almost, what? How many years did Jim Crow last? For almost 100 years? Nearly? And then you had redlining, that black people couldn't buy property in other neighborhoods. They had to stay in the hood. How is that freedom? You can't go pass a line to go and buy a house. Even if it was in a white neighborhood, you could not go in that white neighborhood and buy no land. You were not allowed to. They will raise the prices up so high. And even if black people moved in a white neighborhood, they will actually fucking try to get you out of their neighborhood. They did that. And it's been proven because you can even look it up yourself. I said you got to do your research. Stop believing that everything has been given to us because they want us to say that something, they want us to celebrate Lincoln freeing slaves. They want to celebrate a white man helping us, and we never help ourselves, which we did help ourselves to be free because blacks actually did something that they thought that we would never do. We went out there and we helped fight the war. Not just that war, many other wars, which we really honestly shouldn't be fighting for nobody. We should be fighting our own war. Instead of going out there fighting for the white man's war and fighting their enemy. That's all we did was fight their fucking enemy. The enemies that we had none. But we were out there fighting their enemy. Just because they say they're going to do something for us. They always tell us they're going to do something. We put on that uniform. We die. That's it. Most of the black people that actually fought in the war never got a medal until the 90s. Or even wasn't even recognized as people that actually fought in the war and did things in the war that helped the war. They were actually denied medals, or they were getting a medal, but somebody told them, no, we don't want to give them no medal. And next thing you know, they give them a medal like 100 years later. And blacks fought in every war in this land. And what have we received? Absolutely nothing. We didn't receive anything when we came back from the World War II or even World War I. They didn't even celebrate the ending of the war with black people when we were helping the Spaniards over there fight. Was it the Spaniards? I think it was the Spaniards or the Irish. One of we helped fight. And they didn't help. They didn't celebrate with us. They celebrated with the Europeans, the American soldiers, the white soldiers. They didn't celebrate with the black soldiers. They wasn't even invited. We had to ask to fight. We had to ask to fly planes. We had to ask to help with guns. We couldn't. They wouldn't even let us use a gun. They wouldn't even let us walk around being a soldier at home without us being beat to death. Like they beat the dude blind. I forgot his name. They beat some. I forgot his freaking name. I wish I could figure his name out. They beat somebody that came home. He was on a bus. He was trying to sit in the front. They wouldn't let him sit in the front. They told him to sit in the back. He said, "Listen, I'm a soldier. I just came home, and I just came home from war." They didn't give a damn. They dragged his ass off the bus, and the cops came, picked him up, beat him so bad, blinded him. I think he died like a couple of years ago. Beat him so bad they blinded him. They took the eye, they gouged his eyes out. And this is a soldier. And he's not the first soldier they did that to. They did that to plenty of soldiers, black soldiers that came from war, that actually, wore the uniform proudly. And the white man beat the living crap out of them. Because they didn't care about them wearing that damn uniform. That uniform wasn't even made for us to wear. It's their uniform. They created the military. They created the army. They created the Navy. They created all that stuff. They created the CIA. They created the FBI. They created the police force. Blacks didn't create shit. We were in slave bondage. And even when we were free, we wasn't even allowed to be cops. We wasn't even allowed to be firemen. We wasn't allowed to be anything. How are we celebrating a freedom that we didn't have nothing given to us? We're walking around begging for shit. We beg for shit. And when we get the shit, they take it away from us. Because they feel that they want us to beg. They want us to get on our knees and beg for something because our ancestors dealt with so much. So the next of kin is going to get far worse, which we're getting far worse than our ancestors did. This is why blacks are killing blacks, because blacks don't understand nothing about their history or their heritage. They don't know where they came from. Regardless if you tell us we came from Africa, Blacks don't want to be from Africa. They want to be from somewhere the fuck else. Even though we spread it throughout the world, throughout time, the different islands, the different countries, of course, but we can never say we were African. We can never say our ancestors came from out of Africa. We don't want to. We want to say that we're half white or we're half Spanish or we're Puerto Rican or we're green or yellow. We gotta escape from our ancestors, which the Europeans don't. They love their heritage. They love their past. The Puerto Ricans love their past. The Asians love their past. Everybody else in every other culture and nationality love their history. They carry their flag. They carry their flag proudly. I just watched the soccer event that happened in Philadelphia. All these motherfuckers were down here with different flags. They carry their flag. What does black people flag look like? What was our flag? The United States of America flag, which that's not our flag, and that flag doesn't represent anything but war. That's why the flag was made. But black people took that flag, put it on their shoulder, knowing we have a flag that's 1,000 miles away. We have a couple of flags, but we don't represent them flags. Because we say, oh, we wasn't born here. You got motherfucking Puerto Ricans and every other culture that are born here will get that Puerto Rican flag and represent it in front of their lawn, even though they're born in America. Because they're not afraid to represent their heritage. They're not afraid to represent anything that they used to have in the past, even if it was 1,000 or 1,000,000 years ago. They will represent it because they're proud of what country they came from. Even if it was Puerto Rico, even if it was the Dominican Republic, even from Thailand, even from Africa or anywhere in Australia, they will represent their flag. Even the Jewish people represent their flag, and they were in Germany. They were in fucking Germany in concentration camps under rule over Hitler. Even the Indians, the South, the North, the East Indians were even slaves to the Dutch and the Portuguese. And what did they do? They represent their flags. Why does black people don't have a flag to represent? Why do we represent an American flag? That's not our flag. That flag was never made for us because we were in, number one, we were in chains when that flag was made. The United States was a country that was taken by the Europeans and was owned by the Europeans, governed by the Europeans, made laws by the Europeans, and this land is still owned by the Europeans. And the Native Americans are still here. And people say, oh, well, they got all this stuff. The Native Americans got stuff because they didn't want them to do the same things Africans did. They didn't want Native Americans to actually come out there and fight like they did. Remember, Native Americans fought for this country. They fought for this country because it was theirs. They had wars with the Europeans for a couple 100 years. Mexicans did the same fucking thing when the USA invaded Mexico. And they made Mexico part of the United States. And they didn't like that. So the Mexicans was like, no, fuck that. We're not going to be part of the United States. We want our independence. So they got their independence by fighting this country. That's the reason why this border wall bullshit and immigration shit cracks me up. Because you should know your history about what happened hundreds of years ago about what happened to the Mexicans. Or just the Native Americans. Or any other history of culture that blacks even went through. But black people don't care. But we'll celebrate a holiday. We're sitting here on June 19th. That's something that happened 300 years ago. That was already celebrated. But we're taking that same day to give it to us to have something. Because you got the Irish, you got the Jews, you got the Europeans celebrating all these different holidays. And the holiday that we stopped actually talking about is February, Black History Month, because they didn't want to give us a Black History Month. They didn't want to give us a Martin Luther King Day. They didn't want to put Harriet Tubman or Martin Luther King on the currency. But we worried about having a holiday. We begged the Congress to give us a holiday. What about Juneteenth? What happened on Juneteenth? I don't know. Oh, we just want it. Oh, let's look it up. Oh, that's when they freed slaves. Let's get that. Half of the fucking country didn't even want to give blacks Juneteenth. They didn't want to get, most of the country didn't even want to sign over to vote to get Juneteenth. These are white people that didn't want to do that shit. White, powerful people didn't want Juneteenth. Even blacks didn't want that shit. What is the point of celebrating a holiday that we were still in bondage after the fucking, after abolished slavery, after Lincoln abolished slavery, we were still slaves. So we're still working on plantations at the time that slavery was over. Because blacks didn't even know they were free. And when we were free, we were roaming around not doing shit. Our ancestors had to find a way to make it in this country because they didn't know anything about this country because they never went outside of this country. They never went anywhere besides being on a plantation. And how far they could go because their slave masters will make sure they didn't go that far. Or when they did escape, they didn't know where the fuck they were going because they were only being helped by other people to help them get to these places so they could be freed. And once they were free, they were being chased after by slave catchers. And they went up north, they were captured and brought back to the south. Or if somebody else would have caught them, another person that owned slaves would have caught them, they would have been the ones that actually be able to own them. Because that was the law. They had laws back then that was actually for black people. Don't black people know that shit? Or black people are lost? They don't know that they had laws for us. For our ancestors. They had laws that we couldn't do shit. We couldn't piss without them knowing that we were pissing. We couldn't shit without them knowing that we were shitting. We couldn't even eat out the trash that they had left in them somewhere that the kids couldn't even go in the trash and eat because they were so hungry and starving. They couldn't even go in the trash and eat. They would get whipped. They slept in rooms that were all like 10 or 11 people in one room sleeping on the floor. Sleeping on straw. They had to make their own bed. They had to invent a way to make their beds out of straw and hay. While the slave masters slept in nice quarters, and even the slave catchers slept in some nice quarters. You got these motherfuckers, you got us sleeping on the floor. Like 20 of them sleeping on the floor. Even kids, babies. Even the babies had to be taken out to the plantation while the mother worked. Or it'll be at least about 3 women taking care of about like 15 babies. Because they had one motherfucker dude, they had these slave farms that they would have the slave, the big guy, will have sex with all these female slaves, and they will sell the children. And the women and the white women were the ones that did that shit. They're the ones that created that shit. The white slave owners that actually owned more slaves than the men usually started them farms. What shit black people don't understand what we went through. And we're not going through that same shit the fuck today. Now I know we're not going through the things that they would in the past that was very brutal because we still have lynching. We still have courts that will make black people go to jail and not get parole over a little bit of ounce of drugs. They created the 3-strike rule for blacks. Everybody know about Hillary Clinton and his wife doing that shit. You had the war on drugs. The war on drugs wasn't for them to stop drugs coming into the country. It was war on drugs to go after black people because they were giving it to black people to sell so they could lock them up. So once they get the drugs and the guns back from the blacks, they'll put the guns back out on the street again to the black people so the black people can sell. They created HIV for black people. So HIV was a virus for us. Because it only did it when blacks were doing crack or doing coke. So they blamed that on us. Everything was put on us once we were freed. What shit that was good? We went through the civil rights movement. We had to watch our leaders die, like Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, and many other great, powerful leaders die in front of us. How's that freedom? They fought for our freedom and they fought for our freedom, so we watched them die. And they made excuses of why they had to go. And they turned our own black people because they had to. Because if they found out a white man killed a black man, it would have been this big war going on, which they were trying to keep blacks from having these riots. But when they found out Martin Luther King died, they had a riot. When they found out when Malcolm X died, they had a riot. But they were actually so upset that they knew that these black people wasn't killing our leaders. They were set up to kill our leaders by the people that really didn't like us in the first place. And why the hell you bring us here? Why do you bring us on a boat and you don't want us here? Why did you take us back to Africa when you had the fucking chance? So you're going to tell us to go back to Africa. We would have been in Africa right now and probably been thriving. But see, they were afraid that we would go back and probably shoot ourselves up for war and come back over here and do whatever we want to these white motherfuckers that had our ancestors enslaved. And that's what they were afraid of. They were afraid of what we were going to do once we became free. And when we became free, they had to make sure they kept us in line. So they gave us more laws. They started locking us up. start beating us up, lynching us, burning us, and doing all this other kind of stuff. A lady, I'm never gonna forget. I watched that video about one of the women that were taken from her family. She was pregnant. She was hung on a motherfucking pole, and she was hung, and she was burnt. She was shot up. She was shot up first. Then she was burnt to death. And they took her body and they fucking used the parts of her bodies as motherfucking memorabilia. And they didn't just do that to him. They did it to her. They did it to a couple of other blacks. Even when they had white people trying to help us, they go after the white people because they were mad because white people were helping us. They didn't like that either. Or any other culture, they didn't like that because they hated us the most. But we sitting up here saying all these years we've been free. I'm trying to figure out when we've been free. When? Rodney King beaten. When we went down to Los Angeles, it was tore up Los Angeles. Even during Black Lives Matter. See how they treated black people. They went after black people instead of going after any other culture that was involved in that. Because it wasn't just black people doing marches. It was all cultures. But they blamed black people, the ones that were doing the riots. Because they didn't want us doing that shit. They don't like black people having a freedom of anything. Freedom of protest, freedom of speech. They don't like that we have these things. That's why they take us down. That's why they have people follow us. Watch us from video camera. Why do you think they put all these cameras up? Why can't we enjoy smoking weed? Why can't we enjoy, making a little money so we can have money in our pockets? Even if we got to sell stuff that we not supposed to sell. Why can't we do that? Because they keep that away from us because we know how to sell shit. We know how to make money. They hate the fact that we know how to make money. That's why they keep things away from us. And only they allow to tell us what to sell and what not to sell. This is crazy how black people hate me for what I say and say that I'm against black people. I'm not fucking against nobody. I love my black people. That's the reason why I fucking make videos like this. Because I want black people to wake the fuck up because we're fucking asleep. We still think they love us. They want to help us. We vote for these presidents and put them in office and think they care. They don't give a fuck about black people. They don't. They never did. This is the reason why it's called the next of generations, dog. They learn from their ancestors or their grandmothers, their great-grandmothers, their moms, dads, of what they have learned from their family members to do to black people when they're young. They've been in the South. Half of them own land that used to be owned by their ancestors that owned slave plantations. Like Donald Trump. Like many of these leaders that you see that were former entrepreneurs or former rich people that had family that owned slaves. You think they like us because, I'm a change because my ancestors were very bad. A lot of these motherfuckers know what they have done. That's the reason why they keep their mouths shut and they pretend like they don't know what's going on. Because there's people out there that knows that their ancestors were former slave owners and they were teaching them how to be hateful towards blacks. But you got to be friendly with blacks too. You have to be friendly with us because they know how we are. So you have to pretend, they have to pretend to like us, but they really don't like us. So they make us look like we're going to give them all these things. What did they have given us? They gave us trashy ass welfare, child care. They gave us trashy ass education. They gave us trash of everything. Back in the time when we were actually getting educated, they were teaching the education. They would teach the white educating people. They would teach us different type of education. They would teach us about their leaders, their powerful ancestors, like the Ku Klux Klan and the white supremacy. They would teach us about that so we could know who their God was. They said they were God. We worship them as gods, even though we try not to, but we do because we worship their currency as God. Which people hate when I talk about the currency. Like the currency is this great thing that was created. It was never the greatest thing created, but it was created to keep us in line, dog. It's like the credit card. To keep us in line, to make us spend what they want us to spend or lock us up when we spend too much. They go after black people for spending too much money, but they won't go after a white person for spending over $10,000, right? But they'll get mad at us when we spend over $10,000. Or we want to go to the bank and try to get our money out. We want to get a car loan. We want to get a bank loan. We want to get all these things, but we can't get this shit. Or if our driver's license is about to, like, our driver's license to them is not good and they will lock us up and put us in holding because they feel threatened. They'll feel threatened by us for having a gun in the car than any other culture. And most of us don't even have guns. We don't even own guns. But they feel, oh, you about to shoot somebody. Well, get your gun out. Don't get the taser. Get the gun. So they're pulling out the gun, but not the taser. And we're getting shot, but not tased. But when we get tased, they didn't shoot us. It's crazy. We are hated, dog. Like, why don't nobody know? Why does us black people think that we are so important? We're not important to nobody. We should be important to ourselves. We should be communicating with each other like every other culture and try to protect each other, make money with each other, build with each other. But we don't know how to do that because we were never taught that because our ancestors were in slave chains. So once they were freed out of bondage, they still wasn't taught that because they were teaching us how to bow down to the white man. Here, open this book, Education, page 1. Native Americans were here, but the Europeans came. They made them surrender. Now, the Native Americans calling white people God. Black people brought over here on slave ships. They gave them a Bible, told them, look, you're going to read this Bible. We're God. You're going to worship as a God. Yeah, you're going to worship that God, but you're going to believe that we are God too. So open up that book. This is how you're going to learn English. This is how you're going to learn history. You're going to learn this book. You can't read no other book. You can't read no other literature. Better not find you with a pencil. Better not find you with a crayon. Better not find you with any type of other literature. If you have any literature in your house, we're going to whip you or we're going to fucking hang you. And don't tell me that's not true if you never watched the 12 Days a Slave. 12 Years a Slave. Tell me you didn't see that in Roots. Even Roots wasn't really a true story about slavery. But it was telling you how black people had to go through so much to get where we are today, which we have not gone anywhere. We still standing in place because we still are walking over here talking to the white man like he's our homeboy. Hey, what's up, homie? What's up, dog? You chilling? Yeah, okay. So can I get that loan? No, dog, I can't give you a loan. How can you not get a loan? How can you not get a bank loan or a house loan? Why do they make it so hard for us to get all this shit? Even though our ancestors were the ones that were in captivity for 300 years, they should be giving us shit, but they don't have to give us shit because why would they? They said they're gonna tell us, well, we gave y'all freedom. What freedom did you give us? From the 1800s on down, we've been through so much bullshit throughout this whole country, not just this country, around the world. Even during the civil rights movement, why do we need the civil rights movement? Why do we have black code? Why do we have Jim Crow? Why do we need all that shit? We're supposed to be free. Why do we have all these laws for black people? It was all laws for us. It was no laws for any other culture. It was all the laws were put in for us. And we supposed to be in America with the Constitution, the Declaration of Independence, but that didn't fucking matter. Freedom of speech, all that shit didn't matter. Freedom of protest, all that didn't matter. They try to take that from the fuck us. Out there, we were walking out there marching. They come in there with the fire department, the police department, the FBI, the military. You talk about the military back. You talk about Donald Trump and the military today. Back then, they used to use the fucking military. They used to use martial law every single time black people came out and tried to protest. They would use martial law on black people. When we even try to speak up for ourselves to a police officer, hell no. You talk about the police officer treat you bad today. Police officers never far worse than they were back in the 1900s to the 1950s and 60s. They was far worse than them. The police was far worse. They will beat you. They won't even talk to you. They'll throw you in a car somewhere and you be hung on a tree somewhere. And your body be on fire. Or they put a cross in the middle of your fucking garden and snatch your family out and kill your family. And you know what? No court is going to fucking prosecute them because they will always have a white jury. Black people will be sitting up there. Well, he was in my house at the time he burnt that cross. Oh, well, there's no evidence here that person right there was burned across your house. We're going to free them. They're not going to jail. And next thing you know, we're standing like, what the fuck? Like, he was in my house burning the cross. He took my family out, shot my family to death. No, but a white juror would not fucking prosecute their own motherfucking people. Remember, back then it was all white jurors all the time. So if black people got in trouble for something, even if a black person didn't even do it, like, half of the time they're saying black men were raping everybody at the time. Going around raping white women. like they did in Tulsa when that woman said that she was being touched by a motherfucking black man that was going to the bathroom because the only bathroom he could use was on the top floor because he wasn't allowed to use a white bathroom that was on the bottom floor. So he had to go upstairs to the third floor to use a bathroom. The white girl was the only one in the elevator with him. Well, I don't believe that. I believe there's other people on there. I believe that the people that were on the elevator lied. Lied, said it wasn't on the elevator, but she was like, well, he touched me. Then they snatched that motherfucker out. Then the man tried to be defended by his own people. So the other blacks shot at other white people, probably hit a couple of them. Next thing you know, the black man that supposed to rape the woman and the other three black guys ran back to Tulsa, and the white mob followed them and burnt down Tulsa. All because of a woman. All because of a white woman saying she got raped by a black man, which it wasn't even fucking true. Because he ended up saying it wasn't fucking true. Just like, what's his name? The young boy that died, because they said that he whistled at the woman, which the woman said that fucking even he didn't whistle at me, and the woman was still alive. She died not that long ago. She admitted that she lied, saying, "Oh, he didn't whistle at me. I thought he did." But the young boy was murdered by two white men. Shot him in his face. His mom had to leave his body in an open casket so people could see his face being brutally fucking destroyed by them fucking blowing his face off with a shot close range, beating him to death, tying him to a fucking air conditioner in a river. Everybody knows who that young boy is. They tied him into a river. They had found his body. He was in a river, tied to a motherfucking air conditioner. It's fucked up how black people think that they care about us, dog. And how they treat us is trash. Yes, you want to survive in this country. You want to make money in this country. You thinking everything is so beautiful about this country. So why? Because you put a uniform on and let them tell you where to go, which they did hundreds of years ago when we didn't have to put the uniform on and fight for their enemy. Because all we do is fight their fucking enemies. But we count their currency. Like we created the currency, but we didn't create any of that fucking currency. The money is not even ours. The flag is not even ours. Because that shit was given to us by them because they have to give it to us. Because they wanted to make us citizens so we won't go crazy and start tearing this country apart. Which blacks could have did that a long time ago, but we didn't because we were wanted to be so kind to our slave masters. We wanted to prove that we were good. Yes, master. Yes, I'm good, master. That's all we did. It's not our ancestors' fault because they were brainwashed. They were taught the Bible. They were taught the way of working on land that wasn't even there. They couldn't even go out and even do it. The money that they made from working with other slave masters, they had to give it to their slave master. So they really couldn't keep the money in their hand that they made on the side. It's fucked up what they did to the kids. They snatched their mom and dad away from them, forced them somewhere else while the kids had to be like 14, like probably 8, 9 years old with a grown-ass white man that would be touchy-feely on the girls. And probably the little boys too. Because they raped the men. They raped the African men too. And I know y'all can look that the fuck up. If y'all don't believe anything about that, y'all can look that the fuck up. They used to tie the motherfucking men, the African men to the ground, spread their legs open, arms and their elbows on the ground, tied them with these poles, and the white man will pull the zipper down and start banging them from behind. That's what they used to do, dog. That's how crazy it is. How we don't think that way about the way they treated us, and we're running out here thinking they care. I'm not saying this generation care because they don't know nothing about what happened in their past because they're blinded. Or they were saying, oh, well, we can't let this in school. We can't let that be in school. We don't want to teach about slavery because the slavery is going to try to turn some heads. And it has been turning heads for hundreds of years. But we haven't been vocal about it because every time they give us something like a Juneteenth or like a Black History Month, we get excited. We get a Martin Luther King Day. We get excited. Why are we getting excited? They killed Martin Luther King. We don't even celebrate Black History Month like we're really supposed to celebrate Black History Month beyond America. But we celebrate it only because of America's history, that they gave us a book and tell us to read about Harriet Tubman and all these other blacks that were former slaves, became free, became these people that actually helped free other blacks. But that's not really our history. Our history is far beyond that. We were Egyptian kings and queens. We lived in the world of Kemet. We did things. We had Zimbabwe. We had many other places in Africa, Congo, Kush, many other kingdoms that they came in, invaded, took from us, took our kingdoms and destroyed our kingdoms with religion. Then they wanted to bring us over here to destroy us in this country with religion and force to do free slave labor to make billions of dollars for them to keep their riches. They were rich. White people were rich. We were poor. We didn't have nothing. We didn't own nothing. They stripped us of everything while they made monies off the backs of slaves. And how is that special? What were we celebrating? Just because of the freedom? What freedom? What steps did we make ever since steps black made ever since we stepped off that boat? And a lot of black people struggled to try to get where they are. And we had to struggle. That's not a great thing. Why do we have to struggle when we shouldn't have to struggle? Because they should be like, listen, y'all were slaves. They don't even want to apologize about what they did. They believe the Bible says that slavery is just. And black people believe that shit. Because it says it in the Bible that slavery is just. God said that. Why? Why is slavery just for black people to be in bondage, but no other culture had to deal with that shit for the last past 300 years on this island? I'm not talking there was never no slaves back then, because they were, but why because we were part of the slavery of Arabs too, which that right there I don't like. I don't want to talk about that because that was the first time blacks have ever been slaves with the Arabs, but we also came here as they were becoming Arab. For some reason, we had brought the Quran to ourselves. Then we brought the Bible because black people had to have a religion. We had to follow somebody. We had to follow a God. We have to. I don't give a fuck if people thinking I'm rambling or I don't care because everybody know I'm telling the truth. And black people know I'm telling the truth. And black people are so fucking brainwashed, they hate the truth. Telling me, oh yeah, you ramble on, you talk to, why? Because you got a lot of blacks out there talking the same way I do, making videos like I do, and telling the truth. But you don't want to hear it. And even they even saying like black people don't want to listen. They're hard-headed. Black people are the only most hard-headed people in the world. It's black people. We're so scared of the truth. We like being lied to so damn much. That's why we voted for Trump. That's why we got all these presidents and senators and all these motherfuckers that lie all the time as our leaders, because we're so used to it. And we get leaders that tell the truth. We get mad at them because they tell the truth about us. We don't like nobody talking bad about us, even our own people. We want to be praised. That's why we wait for the white man to praise us so much. That's why we like being athletes, like playing basketball, football, all that, because we like to be praised. We like to be looked upon as something special. No, we worked hard for it. But we know it's because we want to be praised, because we should be looked at as the leaders of this country. We're leaders of the country. We're not leaders of anything. And even when we become a mayor or president or whatever, we always got scandal. They're always chasing us. They're always making us look bad. Even when we became priests, you had all these other fucking white priests doing all this crazy shit back in the 80s and 90s, but then they started jumping on blacks priests. First they were going after these white celebrities. Now you're going after the black celebrities because they don't want you to feel like that they're the only bad people. They want to make us look black, make us look bad. And not just my cultures, many other cultures they go after. But they go after our cultures the worst. So I don't know why we celebrate Juneteenth. People can't tell me why or the history of Juneteenth. People just say we celebrate it because we are given this day. Like they gave us Black History Month because we begged for it. We begged for Martin Luther King's birthday. We beg for these holidays, but we celebrate Christmas, which is a white holiday. We celebrate Thanksgiving, which they killed thousands of motherfucking Native Americans on the same day of fucking Valentine's. The same day on motherfucking Thanksgiving. Valentine's Day. A man named St. Valentine's Day was murdered on the day of February 14th. That's the reason why they call it Valentine's Day, of him shedding his blood after being beheaded. And that's why it's really called St. Valentine's. It's really not supposed to be called Valentine's Day. It's supposed to be called St. Valentine's Day. Look it the fuck up. Everybody thinking that Jesus was born on Easter, but the Roman calendar that they created made it be Easter that he was rose from the grave. Christmas is not even the real way that Jesus was born, and everybody knows that because it's the end year. The Romans put it on the calendar as an end year. I think it was a Greek or a Roman calendar. They made it an end year, so they celebrate the end year First, it was Christmas was the end year. Then they started adding more days. We didn't even have weekends at one point. Now we're given all these holidays that we're celebrating that Christian people shouldn't even celebrate Christmas because they wasn't even allowed to celebrate Christmas. People forgot about Christians were not supposed to celebrate Christmas. It was illegal for them to celebrate Christmas. Now they're celebrating. Like I said, this is what I'm talking about. We don't know why we celebrate these holidays. We don't understand why we're given these holidays because we just celebrate it because everybody else is doing it. But we don't know the real history of these holidays, like Halloween. A lot of people don't even know the real history of Halloween. Know what they call it the Devil's Day. You wear these ugly ass masks to scare everybody to get candy, but you know that's supposed to be a day that you celebrate the devil. So why do we celebrate it? Like, people don't fucking know. Why does our kids celebrate Halloween knowing that's the devil's day? It's supposed to be the devil's day. But after that we'll celebrate Christmas because Christmas is a couple of months later. So since we celebrate Halloween, we'll get out of that and celebrate Jesus being born. So it'll be more better for us to do it that way. It's crazy. It's so crazy how we do things, man. It's weird, dog. Like, I just don't understand the human aspect. I just don't understand why do we do certain things and we don't actually do our research. We just do it because everybody else is doing it. And it's been passed down through generation after generation after generation. And most of these holidays are made to fuck up. They're during the Greek or the Roman or the Mayan calendar. So they had to put these fucking days in. Now, blacks are asking for holidays now. Like, we're asking for candy. Can we please have a day where black people got jobs for the first time? That's the next thing we're going to be asking for. Because we want something from them. Why won't we ask them for money? Why won't we ask them to give us Tulsa back? Or something that we had that we give us some land. Let us buy some land cheap. Why won't we ask them to let us buy some fucking land cheap? Why are we waiting for motherfucking money to come to us? Knowing that money's never going to come to black people, which black people really think that money's going to be falling in our hands in a couple of years because we're doing all these protests. Sorry, it's not going to happen like that. They already gave money out to black people for a very, very long time. And you know why? Because they will tell us the thing that they gave us was healthcare, childcare. They gave us fucking stimulus checks. They gave us taxes. They gave us money for all these things to buy clothes and, meals and shit like that. That's our way of them saying we're sorry. They're not going to give us no motherfucking money for us being slaves. They gave money to everybody the fuck else because they felt sorry for them. They don't feel sorry for black people. They feel that we should have been still slaves. That's the reason why they won't give us restitution. Because why would they want to give that shit to us? I don't care how many times people be out there fighting for it. Black people we're not getting anything. And it's going to be probably hundreds of years of us fighting until our next of kin gets that money. But we'll already be dead by then. Or we're going to be proud, now my grandchild is getting restitution from 500 years ago. Like, come on, man. Are you serious? Come on, we don't need that money. Tell them to give us some land for free. Let's start off getting some land. Then we can work our way up and see if we can keep the land. We can't keep the land, y'all take the land back. But if we can keep the land, we could make the land fertile and we could actually start helping the economy. Give us some land. That's what I want. I don't give a fuck about money because land is money. Why would I want $1 million? Why do I want $300,000 for? I'm gonna throw that away. Buying all this, they're gonna put up so many fucking commercials on TV about you buying a new car, a new cell phone, get this internet, get this car, get this house, buy a mansion. Why would I want that? I want land. Just give me some land. I can just start doing my own shit, start farming, maybe get some people to invest in my land, to help sell the land to some investors that could actually help me pay maybe over a couple of million for my land from like Walmart or Amazon, or maybe them big name motherfucking companies that come into the country that's looking for land. That's when you make your money because you own like 5 pieces of land. They should get at least about 3 or 4 pieces of land so we can own, so we can use, so we can sell to get more money. Why the fuck you give me $300,000? I don't want that shit. Oh, that could pay off everything. I don't want to pay off. I don't give a fuck. You know what's gonna pay off everything? My land gonna pay off everything. because I'm gonna make more money getting that investment on that land than I did getting $300,000, which I'm gonna waste on bullshit. Which black people are the only ones that waste money on when they get money from the fucking country. We get taxes, we out there buying cell phones, cars, and all luxury gifts. But we don't invest our money in anything. And I'm not talking about investing your money into little small ass businesses. I'm talking about in the stock or something that will actually get you more money. It's hard to invest in stock because I'll be thinking about it all the time to try to see if I can do it because I know a little bit about stock, but I'm not great at it. But I am learning little by little. And I'm thinking, like, if I start, maybe I could, but you got to be very, very wary about investing because you can actually put money in, earn a little bit, and then lose all of it. Or you could probably put money in and then earn a lot of it. But it's hard. I understand. But there's people out there talking to me like, yo, dog, you should invest your money in this. Like I had this one guy, me and my homie was sitting in the car chilling, going downtown. There was this guy saying, yo, dog, black dude was like, yo, man, this is how you can invest money and get more money. Because black people should be doing this shit. Black people should be sitting up there waiting for a check to spend money on the most dumbest shit that we always spend money on stuff that we don't need. And then it's not an asset. It's nothing that we can use in our credit. You know what I mean? We want to buy a home and we can't buy it with our credit. We can use an asset to help buy a home or a car. We can't do that because we don't have no asset. We don't own no land. We don't own nothing. All we own is the clothes on our backs and probably all the little material things that we can buy. But the house is not ours. The car is not ours. The apartment is not ours. So we don't own none of the land. So we can't use that as asset. But you can't take your PlayStation and use it as an asset. You can't do that. You can't take your lamp and use it as an asset unless it's a Tiffany lamp. That's something that's expensive. That's over $1 million, maybe $100,000, $300,000. You can't use your credit because your credit's so fucked up. So if you want to get a nice little car that's probably a Jaguar or probably a nice little Testarossa, you can't even buy it. Because your credit's so fucked up, you can't even use their assets that you have because you don't have no assets. Because the bank is going to ask you, do you have any assets you can use to help lease this car? No. Well, sorry, we can't help you. But we're going to help that white guy over there because that motherfucking white guy got some assets. Or we're going to help that black guy over there because that black guy got some assets. But we don't because we don't own nothing. We barely own the stuff that we wear and the houses that we live in and the cars that we drive because we got to struggle to pay them off every month. And they can take it from us anytime if we don't pay off. So basically, these motherfuckers over here are waiting for us to not be able to pay that shit off so they can take it away from us so they can resell it to somebody the fuck else. They've been doing this for a very fucking long time and they're going to continuously do this to us, man. So we celebrating all these holidays. We should leave these fucking holidays alone and don't give a fuck about a Juneteenth. We should give a fuck about Black History Month. We should give a fuck about none of these days because none of these days really represent us as black people. Because we don't even know the fuck we are. Why we celebrating Juneteenth, a black holiday, when we don't even believe that we're fucking black? Or not just because we're not black, because that's just a color that was just given to us by the Spanish that gave us that color because they were called Negro. So they called us Negro. Then they started calling us other names. But we were actually not called black. We didn't even have a representative of a color. But we gave that name to ourselves. So we don't even know who we really the fuck are. We're just on this continent. The Europeans don't have to call themselves Europeans. They don't even call themselves white. They can call them what they originally were called back in England. But the thing about it is, if you go to England and call white people European, they will look at you like you fucking crazy. Because they don't even know what European means. But we know what European means because we think white people are European. And really, basically, that's not really their culture. But we are not black. But we call ourselves black because that's the only name that we represent ourselves as because we don't know anything else about ourselves. We don't know no other names that we were called back then because we don't care about the names that we were called back then. We like to be called nigger. We like to be called nigga. We like to be called names that are fucking so disrespectful. And I think the word black is very disrespectful. It means a person. It means something that can't absorb light. So we can't absorb light, which we can absorb light because black people are the only ones that can absorb light. We can only ones that can absorb sunlight because of our skin color. But black people don't believe that. Believe we're European. Believe we're half Puerto Rican, half Native American, half Chinese. We believe we're all these other cultures. When we talk about Africa, no, I ain't African. I don't like African people. Why? I don't know. Because you don't know not one fucking African motherfucker. You never been to Africa. So you don't know nothing about Africa. You just see the Africans that come from Africa here that you think they hate us. Why would Africans like black people that black people don't even know anything about their own culture? They don't know nothing about themselves. Africans know more about the culture of Africa and black people than black Americans do. Even the Europeans that live here, that have been born here, that came from Europe, knows more about their culture than black people do. And many other cultures of many nations know their history and their culture more than black people do. But you hate another culture that's your culture. That's fucking ridiculous to me. To hate African people because you don't like that you think they're better than you. They don't think they're better than no fucking body. They just don't understand why black people don't know anything about them fucking selves. And they think we're ignorant as shit because we don't own any fucking thing. We talk shit, we don't own a goddamn thing. We got no money in our pocket. We're the only people that are sitting there begging the white man to help us. We're waiting for a president that's going to come in office that's black again to help us, or we're going to find that one white man that actually like black people so we can vote for him or her to help us. That's all we've been looking for is a leader. We had leaders in the past. We don't have leaders today, so we start looking at our presidents. We start looking at our governors. We start looking at our mayors. We start looking at our rappers, our singers, our celebrities. We look at them as our leaders. We don't look at nobody else as black that's trying to become a leader, but they'll try to shut that black person down because they don't want no more black leaders. So they got rid of the Tupacs. They got rid of all the other black leaders that were coming in to stand up for black people. But they called them gangsters, and they called them murderers or rapists because they had to, because they didn't want them to rise up so they could turn black people against their own people. That's how they do it. They continuously still do it. That's the reason why black people don't know nothing about themselves. And we struggle to learn anything because the history books that they put in our hands has nothing to do with us, has something to do with them. Rockefeller was the best thing that ever was created for the white man to create the educational system, to make the education system only be used against us. And they even said it during slavery. You never let a black person know who the fuck they are. You never tell them about their past. You never tell them about their history. You never tell them what they was and what they could be. You always keep them brainwashed to keep them from not knowing that they used to be kings and queens, used to be rich. You had Mala Musa. They don't even talk about, they just started recently talking about Mala Musa, the richest man that ever fucking lived. He had more gold and anything than anybody in the world. They said that he could have corrupted the world's economy if he lived today. That motherfucker used to have 1,000 fucking camels walking through fucking Africa going to Mecca. Even when he passed through Egypt, they were actually shot seeing like 1,000 motherfucking. And he used to give out money to everybody. And he used to buy land throughout Africa. And had made the people that he will see actually work on the land. He will hire them to work on the land. Yeah, people say that he went broke. He probably did, but I don't believe he went broke. I think people were so jealous of Mala Musa, they started making up these fucking bullshit ass stories about Mala Musa later down the road when they said he was going broke, he was giving out his money, but he was the richest man that ever lived, not motherfucking Musk, not motherfucking Bezos. They're rich in currency. They're not rich in what Mala Musa had. And currency didn't even exist when he was around. It was gold, diamonds, all different type of sapphires and metals that were worth probably quadrillions of dollars. He had fucking Egypt almost go bankrupt. That's how rich he was. He went to Mecca with his money because he was a Muslim. He was a Moorish Muslim. He went to Mecca to go and do prayers, and he gave all half of his money to the motherfucking Mecca. That's how powerful and rich black people were. The richest man, not black or white, the richest black man of all time was Mala Musa, a black man. But we don't celebrate him. We don't celebrate the black pope. We don't celebrate nobody. We celebrate a pope that just passed away not that long ago because he half Puerto Rican. He was a Spanish. Now we have a half black African pope. Oh, we're celebrating him. When did we ever have we had a couple of black popes that we don't even talk about. We had a couple of black Roman kings we don't even talk about. Not just Greek, Roman, they're, black, don't talk about them. Powerful people that died early ages because they were so fucking hated. They were killed, murdered. We had Nefertiti. We had her husband. We had Anita. We had we had many other people that were so powerful and black and proud of queens and kings that lived throughout Africa. Why won't we celebrate them? Because we don't know nothing about them. Because we were only learning about the kings of like King Henry the Third and Queen Elizabeth. We were learning about them kings and queens. We were learning about what's his name in the Bible. We're learning all about all the popes and the kings of the Bible, but we never learned anything about anybody black. Oh, forgot. They say Jesus was black, but I'm trying to figure out how Jesus was black and then being Jew. But I'm trying to figure out who's nothing but, I still can't understand that, but that's just me. But we celebrate a history that we're so broken through history. Like we shouldn't even be studying history because we don't know nothing about because we don't learn anything about it. And even if we start learning about African history, we'll be so fucking shocked about what African history that we have, how great it was, how powerful it was, how the continent was called the Garden of Eden. You know what I mean? That was we used to have a big ass lake in the middle of Africa, the largest lake in the world. Africa is the second largest country in the world to Asia. So I don't get it. You can fit every single continent in the motherfucking Africa. Every country, you can put the whole America in Africa. That's how big Africa is. But we don't celebrate it because we think it's a small little ass fucking country. Knowing they go and steal all the resources out that motherfucker. That's the first country they actually stole all the resources from. It's from Africa. Because Africa is so large in resources, they still go in there to this very day and steal shit out of Africa. Where do you think they get their oil from? Where do you think they get their metals from? Their gold, their diamonds. What do you think they get the blood diamonds for? The black diamonds, the red diamonds, the green diamonds. Where do you think they get all the diamonds from? They get them from Africa. And they will kill you to get to the diamonds. They will kill all the Africans or force the Africans to work as slaves, get them nothing, no money at all to make. People get mad when Jordan had these guys over in another country work for 25 cents making sneakers, but you got kids in Africa that makes far less than the kids that make sneakers in other countries, but they're going into these caves and drilling for diamonds. These dark caves, and they're dying, and they're getting these kids to go and work in these diamond mines in Africa. And they getting paid absolutely fucking nothing to work in these diamond mines. Oh, why is Jordan making these kids make sneakers? So when we talk about the kids over there in Africa that are digging for diamonds in dark motherfucking diamond mines with no type of safety equipment, why don't we talk about that? Oh, we don't want to talk about that. We won't talk about their health and safety because that's what they do. They try to make you not care about what's going on over here, but they want you to care what's going on over here because they have to make sure that black people understand who is in charge, and we're not in charge of nothing. I don't give a fuck how much power you think we have. We have no power at all. I don't give a fuck if you're the president of the United States, mayor, government. I don't care what you are. Black people have no power. We are puppets just like the white man is, but the only reason why white people are probably puppets because they see what's really fucking knowing what's going on, but they don't want them saying anything. Us black people, we don't know what the fuck is going on. All we care about is the power and the money that we're getting in front of us. We don't care about helping our own people because we believe our own people should help themselves, knowing that we need help. Probably because sometimes when we do need help from our own people because you got other cultures that are helping their own people and not afraid to help their people. We're the only ones that don't help each other. We see money, we take the money off the table before our partner sees it. And then we'll lie and say, well, there was no money on the table because we don't want anybody else to look good except us. That's the reason why we're such heavy spenders and we want to buy the most dumbest shit to make us look good. We want to buy the big chains and the Jordans and the nice clothes. Why do we need to wear that shit? Because number one, we didn't wear that shit in slavery. And then when we got out of slavery, we wanted to be just like our white partners. So we dressed just like them. We wanted to smoke cigarettes like them. We wanted to wear our hair like them. We wanted to live in the houses like them, drive cars like them. So we started competing against the white person. And then white people didn't like that shit. They didn't like that we were competing with them. So they're trying to take the clothes away from us. Then we were the ones that were smoking cigarettes. They try to keep black people from smoking cigarettes. Then white people were the first ones to start smoking weed in America. We wasn't smoking no weed. Then we started smoking weed. We wasn't doing any type of drugs during the time we were in America. We were slaves. But when we got out of slavery, we started doing drugs. We never shot a gun before. Only time we were in war. But once we got out of slavery, we wanted to own a gun. Not to protect us from our slave masters. We wanted to have a gun just to have one because they used to have one. We wanted to wear a uniform like them. So we put the uniform on just because they had the uniform on. We wanted to fly the planes because they flew the planes. We wanted to drive tanks because they drove tanks. We didn't want to do anything on our own. We didn't like to be the ones that be look like everybody else that were other race were doing everything except us. We want to be part of it. But we didn't want to say, you know what, we better fucking work harder so we can get the fuck off this island. Why didn't we work hard enough to get the fuck off this island? Why didn't we work hard enough to try to buy our own and purchase our own island? Black people should have been purchased their own island. We should have been not living here. We should have left and let them deal with this country themselves. Why do we have to stay here? We could have went to Madagascar. Or we could have went off the coast of Africa, the little small islands, or New Zealand, off the coast of New Zealand, closer to the Antarctic, or maybe a little bit closer to the warmer climates of the equator, and we could have had our own island. We could have had our own utopia, but we chose to stay the fuck here. And you see how they treat us here. They don't even want us here. You talk about the immigrants. I don't even think Donald Trump even cares about the immigrants. I think he cares more about getting rid of black people than immigrants. Because you see, they're not talking about immigration like that. You haven't heard about ICE in a while, ever since they had it like around 3 days ago. I'm trying to tell you, this is going to disappear. That immigration bullshit is going to disappear. Black people are next, dog. Black people are next. We're going to be the ones looked as the ones that are the fucking immigrants. We're going to be the ones locked up. Black people really think that white people are going to protect us and these leaders are going to protect us. That's not happening. Stop that shit. Yeah, that immigration shit, like Black Lives Matter thing disappeared. Like you don't hear nobody talk about Black Lives Matter no more. That's going to happen to immigration. It's going to die down and disappear. And Trump is going to start saying, you know what? Let's start going after some black people now. Hey, Vance, come here for a second. Let's go in here and talk some. Let's get some blacks because he's going after us next. Because we're all the ones that they really don't want here. They rather keep. I bet you anything that's the reason why Donald Trump is really not really going hard after immigrants because white people started complaining. White people were complaining about the immigrants. Black people were complaining about the immigrants of why they're here making all this money, why they're taking our jobs. White people are like, why are they motherfuckers letting them fucking leave? They're the ones that's helping us pick these motherfucking cherry trees and these peach trees and shit. They're the ones that are going out there on the farm and doing stuff and helping us with the farming because farmers was disappearing and it was helping the economy. Now you're getting rid of immigrants. Why don't y'all go after black people? Like black people are the ones that don't fucking want to work to do shit. You got the immigrants, they want to work. They want to do shit. Why are you getting rid of them? That's why the white people were out there protesting. You know white people were out there protesting? I can really see black people were out there trying to stay away from protesting for immigrants. White people are not going to stop protesting for immigrants because they need the immigrants. They need free slave labor. They need some labor. So black people ain't going to be working at the farms. They ain't gonna be going there and say, "Can I have a job? I could pick cotton, pick trees and fruits off trees." No, we good. We got this guy right here that can do it. That you can't do it because we know you're only gonna stay here for like 5 minutes, get tired. Then you're gonna complain about the jobs giving you too many hours. Then you're gonna want to leave early. No, I'm just cool. We got this guy here that could work 8 straight hours, and he's not going to complain. Damn, I need a job. Okay, well, a lot of black people need jobs, but black people ain't trying to work. Even a white man even said that shit. Black people don't want to do anything. Like you can't hire black people on a farm because they won't stay long. It's a shame. We complain about immigrants being here because they're making money, but white people are the ones defending them. White people are actually defending immigrants, even though it looked kind of weird that they were saying they want to get rid of them, but they really didn't want to get rid of immigrants. They thought they were going after blacks. That's what they really thought they were going after. But they saw them going after them immigrants that actually were actually doing shit. Oh, they got the Mexicans. Yeah, they'll talk bad about Mexicans, but see, it's different because Mexicans are all not the same color. Remember, they got dark skinned Mexicans too, the same complexion as a black man. So they probably thinking like, oh, they probably going after blacks, Mexicans, and keeping the light skinned Mexicans, the ones that can work, the ones that can work. We can get rid of the black ones. You know what I mean? We can get rid of black people too. Let's get rid of them. because Donald Trump's going to come after us next. He is so fucking proud, you know, about doing this, but also he's disgusted because, the people that used to follow him and say do this and do that, is changing their mind, and he don't like that shit. But like I said before, Juneteenth is the worst celebration that black people are doing. We need to stop celebrating these holidays and start building something for us to actually start making some money so we can actually buy some land. Like, we should actually have a state of our own. We should have at least a part of this country to be our own. We should own the East Coast or the Midwest. We should be living in the Midwest. Because nobody lives in the Midwest. Why ain't black people owning the Midwest? Because we don't have no money to buy anything to support us. We have those supporters. All the supporters out there, they don't want to help us. But we are looking for people to support us. We're looking for people to help us. But knowing there's nobody going to help us and never will. Bless to everybody out there, man. I know I ran my mouth, but I just can't stand these holidays that black people beg for. We need to stop begging for shit. Why are we begging them for us to help us and knowing they're laughing at us when we ask for shit? And then we get pissed at our own people to try to wake us up because we don't want to be woke. We want to still be asleep because we're a Democrat and a Republican. That's the only thing that really cracks me the fuck up about this Democratic and Republican bullshit black people's mixed in with. And they don't even know anything about the Republican or Democratic Party and how it started and why the Democratic Party and the Republican Party was put together during slavery. We don't. Nobody talks about that. And when people talk about it, black people are like, man, that's not fair. That's not fair. Like, it's always got to be about the Democrats and Republicans. It has to be because they're both the same fucking party. They're not anything different. They both go to court together and they make rulings together, and you know the Republicans and Democrats are racist too. But we didn't choose the party that we want to be in. They chose the party that they want to put us in. It's just black people just got an idea and say, I'm not going to stay in the Democratic Party. I'm going to join the Republican Party. But see, the Republican Party is only the way it is now because a lot of the Democratic Party that were rich aristocrats left the Democratic Party and went to the Republican side because black people came into the Democratic side, which they didn't want blacks to be in the Democratic side. So they left the Democratic side to go to the Republicans. That's why they always will say that we have no money to change the laws. Blacks don't have money to change laws. White people do. They can change the laws 24 hours a day, 7 days a fucking week. We can't change any laws. We don't got enough money to change laws. So that's the reason why these Democratic parties and Republican parties are so fucked up, because when you had the Democratic Party full of rich motherfuckers, they left to go to the Republican Party to make that rich, and they went. And then you see a lot of blacks in the Democratic Party that are poor and middle class. There's no rich motherfuckers in the Democratic Party. There is, but not like the Republican Party that got the multimillionaires and the trillionaires. The ones that got plenty of money. And they're looking at us like, yo, that's the reason why they're in office for the next 20 years. Because the Republican motherfuckers are rich. And the Democratic Party is never going to have anybody be able to get and break that shit to get us over the hump of making money, just like we did when we were Republicans during the 1900s, when we were actually making money when we were Republican. You ever notice blacks were making money when they were Republican, and when they became Democrat, they don't have no money? Just think about that. Blacks were making money when they were Republican. Back in the 1900s, before Roosevelt switched blacks over to Democrat. Then we became broke and poor. We're making all that motherfucking cheddar. Owning businesses, owning banks, owning libraries, owning schools, owning land. We were rich when we were Republican. But once Republicans switched over us to Democrat, we just went broke. Now black people are the most brokest people in the world now, in the country. Not besides white people are poor too. They got some white motherfuckers that are poor as shit. But we are just behind them. And even the other cultures that are behind us, that they know that a lot of these motherfuckers become Republican because they know that's where the money is. And our money is just sitting there collecting dust because We had opportunity to build our motherfucker, but the Democratic Party was destroying the Republican Party at the time when black people were out there thriving. They went after us and took everything from us and forced us to become Democrat. That's the reason why black people don't have nothing right now. Because and I always say black people should have stayed Republican, but black people didn't. They just they just had to be something else because somebody gave you something, gave you free health care, gave you child care, gave you all these things, helped women become voters, but it didn't do anything for the economy and us making money and helping us be able to buy land and making us focus on getting richer to compete with the white man and his riches, which they always say the white man will never ever let us taste the fruits of their labor. So this is the reason why we struggle. We should have stayed Republican, but we didn't, you know. But that's the whole point. We don't think, we just do, because we allow them to just make us look dumb. God bless everybody. The game's over. We call moves on the game 7. Indiana came out and whipped their ass, and I believe Indiana might actually win on motherfucking Sunday. It'll be a shock that Indiana wins, but we'll see. How many points he had?